Guilty Crown is set in a post-apocalypse world, where in 2029 Japan was hit by a disaster called Lost Christmas. At that time, a virus called Apocalypse hit the country and left thousands and even millions of people dead. In an effort to establish order, the United Nations sent in an organization called GHQ, which originally aimed to help the crisis by containing the outbreak, while removing all political autonomy in the process. A decade later, Japan is still living under the control of the GHQ, unable to escape its cruel rule. Because of this, there is a group of people known as terrorists, who continue their actions to find the truth behind this disaster. Unintentionally, Oma Shu, a socially awkward student, must be involved in a complicated and intricate conflict that connects him with a past tragedy that he had forgotten. Once, Inori Yujuriha, an internet singer of the band Egoist, escaped from the GHQ building with a mission to retrieve the Void Genome, a genetic weapon stored in a vial. However, the mission was discovered by GHQ, who mobilized their troops to catch Inori, so she was injured and fell into the river. The next day, Oma Shu, who has difficulty getting along with his classmates, coincidentally meets Inori, who is taking a break in her favorite room at school, which she usually uses to be alone and away from her friends. But at that moment, a group of GHQ troops broke in and wanted to catch Inori. They said that Inori was one of the terrorist members known as the Funeral Parlor and immediately took her for interrogation. Shu feels sad because he can't do anything. Suddenly, Inori's robot named Funel asks Shu to deliver an item to the indicated place. When they arrived at their destination, Shu was surrounded by thugs who wanted to take Funel. Luckily, a man named Gai Tsutsugami and his army came to help him by beating up the delinquents. However, before Shu can deliver the entrusted item, GHQ attacks and surrounds them. In this way, Gai told Shu to run away and secure the item that was deposited, which turned out to be the Void Genome. Amidst the chaos that ensued, Shu saw Inori, who was staggering after getting out of the car. Without thinking much, Shu immediately ran towards Inori and tried to help her. The Void Genome that was brought by Shu was shattered by a shot from a GHQ humanoid war machine known as Endlave. When the Void shattered, Shu suddenly saw flashes of memories he couldn't remember. Apart from that, Shu also gets a strange power, where he can take a sword from Inori's body, which not only makes him able to hold back the rocket missiles that are directed at him but can also destroy the Endlave. After the fight was over, the sword suddenly returned to Inori's body, further confusing Shu with what was really going on. Funel then arrives and orders Shu and Inori to stand down, where they are later met by Gai. Gai himself is the leader of the Funeral Parlor and also Inori's boss. Gai is disappointed with Inori because Shu uses the Void Genome. It's then explained that the person who uses the Void Genome will have an ability called the Power of the King. This power allows the person to draw out the hidden power from one's heart and turn it into a weapon called the Void. The Void Genome should have been used by Gai, the leader of the Funeral Parlor, but because of this incident, the power fell into Shu's hands. On that basis, Gai forced Shu to fight alongside the Funeral Parlor with that power. Suddenly, Gai received news from his subordinates that a GHQ troop named Antibody had captured hundreds of civilians supporting the Funeral Parlor, and the person who led the troop was Daryl, who was nicknamed the Slayer. The Antibody troop itself is a troop that is allowed to kill civilians who are allegedly infected with the Apocalypse virus. Without thinking much, Gai immediately ordered his men to save the civilians, and this time Shu couldn't help but join the mission. During that mission, Shu witnessed with his own eyes the atrocities of the GHQ troops. However, thanks to Gai's brilliant strategy, the Funeral Parlor forces managed to lock up and surround the Antibody leader. Unfortunately, the Antibody forces have apparently installed poison gas underground that can kill civilians in an instant, forcing Gai to come out of hiding. This seems to have been calculated by Gai, so Shu can defeat Daryl, who is on the back line, by using Inori's Void. After that, Shu takes Daryl's Void and uses it to form a barrier that reflects any attacks from the antibodies that aim at Gai, thus destroying the Antibody army itself. For their victory, which was mainly due to Shu's services, in the end, Shu received recognition from Gai and was well received by other members of the Funeral Parlor. Sometime later, Shu was very surprised when Inori came as a transfer student to his class. Not only that, but Inori also lives in the same house with Shu on orders from Gai to protect Shu from danger. Gai says that he found a student at Shu's school who witnessed their previous action against the Antibody. Gai orders Shu to find that person. Gai can see someone else's Void, so he knows that the person they're looking for has a Void in the form of shears. The next day, Shu began to check the belongings of people at school one by one. Fortunately, Every time their void is taken, the person will temporarily lose their memory, so Shu's secret ability remains safe. But Shu never thought that the person he was looking for was his own best friend named Yahiro. At first, Inori wanted to kill Yahiro, but Shu prevented her, so they agreed to hide their respective identities. The next day, on the way to school, apparently Yahiro has framed Shu and sold him to the GHQ squad. The incident was witnessed in front of his classmates, where Shu was finally taken to the GHQ isolation facility to be interrogated by GHQ Major Seigai. Seigai explains that Yahiro's younger brother is being treated at this facility as a result of being a victim of the apocalypse virus, explaining why Yahiro has the heart to betray Shu. Seigai tries to disillusion Shu by mentioning that Guy plans to save a mass murderer named Kenji Kito and then gives Shu a transmitter in the form of a pen, which will tell his position when used. Seigai wants Shu to use it when near Guy so that GHQ troops can immediately come and arrest him. When Guy arrives disguised as a lawyer, Shu refuses to help Guy and begins to question funeral parlor's true intentions due to Seigai's influence. However, Shu finally started to move and help the funeral parlor after learning that Inori was currently heading to his place to help him, and is in danger because of him. In the midst of a chaotic situation, Shu actually met a prisoner who was going to be rescued by Guy. Shu immediately took the person's void to defeat the enemy, and also saved Inori from a height, because the person's void power is anti-gravity. Shu, who was supposed to be saved, ends up saving Inori and eradicating all the enemies by himself, and then leaves the facility. Even though he's back on the funeral parlor side, Shu still seems to have kept the transmitter that Seigai gave him. When they arrived at the funeral parlor headquarters, Guy introduced Shu in front of the rest of his organization. He mentioned that Shu possessed the power of the king and would be the centerpiece of their strategy against GHQ. Guy explains that in 3 days, Funeral Parlor will launch an important operation to seize control of Leukocyte, an orbital satellite laser. In preparation, Shu does basic training at the Funeral Parlor headquarters. During his time there he also tries to get close to Inori, thinking that she has feelings for him due to recent events, only to discover that Inori did it all because of orders from Guy, saying that only Guy has her. Even though he was hesitant to take part in the mission to seize leukocytes, Shu finally agreed to help Guy after learning that Guy often received blood transfusions from Inori. He also felt burdened with the many lives he had sacrificed for the continuation of the funeral parlor. At first, everything went according to plan, where Guy, Shu, and Inori and Kenji managed to enter the leukocyte control room. However, when Shu was about to manipulate his core with Kenji's void, Daryl, who had a grudge against Shu, had been waiting for this moment and opened fire at them blindly. Unfortunately, the shot actually hit the core, which shouldn't have been touched, causing one of the leukocyte satellites in outer space to lose its flight power and start falling to Earth and plunging towards the Tokyo area. In that emergency, Guy asked Shu to hand over the transmitter pen he had been keeping, which he then used to summon Major Seigai. Apparently, Guy already knew that the pen was not an ordinary pen. Guy deliberately calls Major Seigai to make a pact, where Guy will help Seigai to destroy Leukocyte, provided that GHQ agrees to release Shu and erase all his mistakes. But in order to destroy the Leukocyte, Guy must sacrifice himself by pressing another button on the transmitter, which turns out to be connected to the Leukocyte, which will fire a laser if the button is pressed. Shu, who saw this, couldn't bear to just let Guy die, so he used Inori's void to help Guy by shooting down Leukocyte. When the positions between him and the Leukocyte were level, Shu fired a shot that managed to destroy the Leukocyte. In this way, Shu makes up with Guy, and Shu can return to live his school life as usual according to the agreement previously made. Several days later, Shu and Inori returned to their school life. Shu's friends, who knew that Shu was arrested by GHQ before, immediately spoke badly about him. Only his close friends like Hare and Sota still want to be close to him without caring about GHQ problems, and one more girl named Arisa, who is the student council president at that school. Arisa herself seems to be the heir of the famous Kuhouing Group technology company, where her grandfather, who is the leader of the group, has been secretly working with the funeral parlor by funding all of their activities. One day, Hare, who is Shu's close friend, wants to ask him out on a date. When Hare wants to express her feelings, they are suddenly run over by a drug dealer who surprisingly is Yahiro. Yahiro explained that he had to do this to treat his brother who was infected with the apocalypse virus. Shu, who feels compassion for Yahiro and Yahiro's younger brother, Jun, decides to help him. Unfortunately, their movement was followed by Seigai, and Daryl worked as the executor. Shu can't help but use Yahiro's void to beat up the enemy, but then Jun is hit by Daryl's attack, and the apocalypse virus instead moves to Daryl's enclave. Shu uses this opportunity to attack Daryl by stabbing his enclave with Daryl's void, and suddenly enters June's mind. June wants Shu to cut off his life with his elder brother's void because he doesn't want to trouble his older brother more than this. Reluctantly, Shu complied with June's request because there was no chance for June to survive the attack he received earlier, so in the end, June died peacefully. From a distance, Hare appears to have witnessed the incident and knows Shu's secret. After June's death, Shu seems traumatized and doesn't want to fight anymore for fear of facing the same situation. Because of that, Shu sabotaged an important mission from the funeral parlor, forcing Guy to expel Shu. Even Inori also left Shu and doesn't live with him anymore. This made Guy realize that Inori seems to have feelings for Shu because of Inori's sad expression. In this way, the mission of infiltrating the GHQ headquarters to seize the meteorite which is believed to be the cause of the apocalypse virus without Shu begins. During this operation, Major Segai betrayed the GHQ by using a meteorite. Major Segai activates the meteorite so that it emits a huge wave, causing many people to be hit by the apocalypse virus including Guy, and then making the funeral parlor their scapegoat. As a result, funeral parlor was at a disadvantage. Shu, who heard the announcement, couldn't believe it and started trying to get up by gathering his friends, including Hare, Yahiro, Soda, Kaanan, and Arisa to help him save Guy and the others. He also revealed his power of using voids and admits that he is a member of the funeral parlor. At first, they thought that funeral parlor was an evil terrorist group, but after being explained by Shu, they realized that GHQ was the real criminal, so they agreed to help Shu. By using his friend's void, Shu broke into the GHQ base until he finally met Inori. However, behind Inori suddenly appeared a mysterious man who immediately took Inori's void, revealing that he has the power of King just like Shu. As the man attacks Shu, Guy arrives in time to save Shu by sacrificing himself, while Inori is taken away by the mysterious man by entering a portal. Guy recognizes that mysterious person is the gravekeeper of Daath named Yu, and Guy orders Shu to follow the person, who then helps Shu recovers his past memories. In the past, Shu and his older sister Mana found a boy washed up on the beach and rescued him until they grew up together and became best friends. The boy turns out to be Guy, who over time actually falls in love with Mana, Shu's older sister. After Shu awakens and returns to the present, he finds Inori who has been held hostage by Kato, head of the GHQ antibodies, who confesses that Inori is someone he will use as a vessel for Mana's awakening. The reason is that Mana is the first human to be infected by the apocalypse virus, and Kato wants to revive Mana again to create a second Lost Christmas disaster. When Shu wanted to stop Kato, Mana's consciousness attacked Shu and at that moment Guy came to save him. In the end, Guy explained that in the past he had planned to tell Shu about the darkness within Mana, but it was too late because Mana had attacked Guy first. Little Shu, who knew about this, immediately thought of Mana as a monster, triggering Mana's emotions so that the apocalypse virus inside of her exploded and spread throughout the country. It was at that time that Guy chose to separate from Shu, while Shu himself chose to erase the bad memory, explaining why some of his childhood memories were lost. After his memory returns, Shu gains a new king power that allows him to summon other people's void without causing him to faint. Thus, Shu takes Guy's void, which Guy himself then uses to shoot Inori, forcibly pulling out Inori's void so Shu can clean up the rest, while Guy himself sacrifices himself to stop Mana's revival. With Guy's death, the funeral parlor begins to lose its function, whereby some of its members, such as Tsugumi and Ayase, decide to disguise themselves as new students at Shu's school. Moreover, the city of Tokyo is now isolated so their movements are very limited. Kato, who is now the head of GHQ, announced that they would not save the people in Tokyo and would seal the area for 10 years by building a wall around the quarantine area. Panic began to hit the people in Tokyo, especially the students at the school. There are rumors that the person who can find the whereabouts of a funeral parlor member disguised as a student at school will be released, so Tsugumi and Ayase are caught by several students who want to be freed. Shu, who saw this, did not remain silent, and he used Tsugumi's void to create projections of himself and several other people so they could report their findings about members of the funeral parlor. Instead of being released, they were all killed, convincing all of them that no matter what the reason was, they would not be released. As a result of this incident, Yahiro suggested Shu become a leader in the school, and record all students to group them based on the strength of the void. Unfortunately, this actually creates differences in treatment, because those with strong voids will receive special treatment in food or vaccine priority, while those with weak voids can only accept their fate. Although at first Shu was against this decision, he could only agree because he had no other choice due to dwindling supplies of food and vaccines. Shu felt down when he found out that Soda, who is his close friend, got the lowest rank, but Hare, who loves Shu to death, comes and hugs him to calm and support Shu. However, not long after that, the weak group led by Soda actually tried to escape from the school, to prove that their abilities were actually useful and not weak. Unfortunately, their whereabouts were discovered by GHQ and several of them were injured, which were instantly healed by Hare's void ability. To escape from there, Soda orders Hare to repair the damaged car with her ability, but this actually provokes GHQ's Endlave to attack Hare so that the car explodes, and Shu, who is hit by the explosion, is seriously injured. Hare, who was the first to regain consciousness, immediately used her powers to heal Shu, but her void was hit by enemy fire and immediately shattered. At that moment, the apocalypse virus immediately covered Hare's body, and fortunately, with her remaining strength, she was able to use her void to heal Shu's severe injuries. Shu finally woke up and immediately embraced Hare's body, which was lying helplessly. Soon after, Hare's body shattered into pieces. This incident made Shu cry uncontrollably because he lost the only person who still believed in and loved him very much. In the end, Hare's death became the main cause of Shu's attitude change to be very cold. Shu beats Soda many times, blaming him for the ultimate death of Hare, and coldly proclaims that he will become the king of Tokyo. Since then, Shu has become feared at school and doesn't hesitate to get rid of anyone who has been infected with a virus. Even after he realized that if a person's void was destroyed, their soul would also be destroyed, Shu used this to frighten people in the hope that they would all submit to him, despite the fact that the students at school started hating the current Shu. Finally, the day came when they planned to attack the border wall and try to escape from there. They planned to destroy the transmitter machine atop Tokyo Tower that is controlling Endlave remotely. Based on Shu's orders, the other students opened a path for him to Tokyo Tower. The fight began, and many victims from the students' side fell. But with Shu's dexterity and expertise in using his friend's void, he managed to reach the top of Tokyo Tower and destroy the transmitter machine. However, after Endlave was successfully stopped and one by one the students left the boundary, apparently most of the students started betraying Shu under Arisa's lead and pushing him down into the large crater. When Inori tries to save Shu, she is shot by one of the GHQ robots, which turns out to be under Guy's control. This really surprised Shu, because as far as he knew, Guy had died. However, Guy had come back to life, which was revealed to be caused by Kato. Guy without hesitation slashes Shu's right hand off and takes the king's power for himself. After that, there is a United Nations plane that wants to destroy Tokyo to prevent the spread of the apocalypse virus, forcing Guy to show the true power of a king by destroying the plane. It seems that Guy has turned into a cruel figure and does not hesitate to kill humans to achieve his goals. This time, the world is really in the hands of Guy, who threatens the whole world as he will destroy anyone who tries to oppose him. Guy also orders the GHQ troops to look for Inori, who is hiding in the city of Tokyo with Shu, who is currently injured. Inori herself is slowly losing herself to Mana, who is trying to take over her body and mockingly calls Inori a monster. However, Inori ignores this and tries to calm Shu down by kissing him, saying that no matter what happens, she will be by Shu's side. Inori also leaves Shu to protect him from GHQ, because she realizes that what they want is her. Inori goes into combat mode, recognizing herself as a monster, and faces the GHQ forces alone. Unfortunately, Guy is there watching the fight from afar and preparing to make a surprise attack, so he managed to catch Inori easily. Shu, who has regained consciousness, finally realized that Inori had sacrificed herself for his safety, making Shu determined to save Inori. Long story short, Shu manages to hold Arisa hostage, who is still in the quarantine area, and orders her to give information on Inori's whereabouts. Instead of finding Inori's whereabouts, Shu finds the fact that his mother named Haruka has defected from GHQ and is carrying the remaining void genome. Shu, who knew about this, immediately forced Arisa to take him to his mother's place. Apparently, Haruka wanted to give the void genome to Ayase, but her plan was interrupted by the arrival of Seigai, who wanted to have the power of the king as well. Ayase and Seigai are fighting over the void genome, but by chance, the capsule falls into the hands of Shu, who just arrived there, and without hesitation injects the void genome into him. In this way, Shu managed to restore his king's power, even stronger because Shu was able to take the void from himself and regenerate his right arm, which had been severed before. By using his new power, Shu manages to kill Seigai easily. What's unique is that this power can not only take the power of other people, but can also absorb darkness, burdens, and diseases that exist in people. So Shu is also seen to be affected by the apocalypse virus because he has absorbed other people's void, and it seems that this is fate that must be held by Shu. On the other hand, Guy announced to the whole world that he would launch the second Lost Christmas to the whole world so that the world would feel the same burden as Japan. It was then that the funeral parlor and the remaining members of the Kuhouin group reunited under Shu's leadership, to defeat their former leader, Guy. Before leaving for the war, Shu plans to return everyone's void because if he dies, then everyone will die too. But Yahiro and the others entrust their lives to Shu and give him full support to defeat Guy and save Inori. Tsugumi hacks the enemy's communication system so that the entire system and the enemy's enclave lose their function, so Shu can enter the enemy base easily. Meanwhile, at the headquarters, Guy seems to want to revive Mana using Inori's body, making Inori thank Guy for having met Shu so that she, who is only a vessel, can feel love. When Shu finally arrived at Guy's place, he was too late because Inori's presence had been replaced by Mana. With the awakening of Mana, the second Lost Christmas finally started. Mana's body let out a mysterious light that enveloped the earth and then embraced Shu. Just like in the past, Shu refused Mana, which made her angry, forcing Guy to take Mana's void. Thus, the apocalypse virus begins to attack all corners of the world. Without wasting any more time, Shu immediately attacked Guy to stop the spread of the virus, thus the fight between the two was inevitable. Unfortunately, Guy's strength is too strong, so even Shu was cornered helplessly. In this situation, Shu sees a small flower shining on the shards of Inori's body, and suddenly Inori's shadow appears from the flower telling Shu not to give up. Even from the flower, Shu was able to take Inori's void, so he got back up and again faced Guy with Inori's void. Thanks to the help from Inori, Shu finally manages to defeat Guy successfully. On the other hand, Haruka and the other members of the funeral parlor manage to defeat GHQ and Guy's subordinates, stopping the Great War. With Guy defeated, Mana has disappeared and Inori's consciousness has returned. Unfortunately, Inori has been severely infected with the apocalypse virus and her body is slowly breaking down. Shu hugged Inori gently and used his king power to absorb all of the void that had spread throughout the world. Even though everyone managed to get rid of the apocalypse virus, there was a big price that had to be paid by Shu. All the viruses he sucked up would infect his body, so the virus started to eat his body. But again, Inori came back to save Shu, and Inori sacrificed herself so that Shu could be freed from the virus. Seeing this incident, Shu's other friends could only mourn their great victory. Several years have passed since that incident. The city of Tokyo is starting to return to normal, and life goes on as usual. Shu miraculously survived the incident and reunited with his friends to celebrate the birthday of Hare, who had died. However, Shu had to give up his right arm, which was replaced by a prosthetic arm. He has also become blind because his sight disappeared after previously trying to take crystallization on Inori. Since then, Shu has had to live by relying on a cane to guide him in walking. This is the burden he has to bear, and the one he gladly carried for the peace of the world.